Hello everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today we have the special privilege of taking a look at the amazing UCS Colonial Viper Mark VII from Battlestar Galactica, designed by the builder David Duperron, who also made the UCS Colonial Viper Mark II, the Colonial Raptor, and the Cylon Raider. This ship is the latest and greatest space fighter to come from the 12 colonies. Features an extra gun on the fin. It's got a lot more speed and maneuverability compared to the Mark II, and it also just looks a whole lot sleeker and cooler. As always, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the details of this LEGO model, including looking at its structural stability, attention to detail, as well as interesting and unique building techniques. But before we do that, I first do want to say that if you wanted to build this UCS Colonial Viper Mark VII for yourself, the instructions can be found at our web store, www.brickvault.toys. Included with each purchase are the PDF step-by-step building instructions, as well as a digital parts list that lets you order all the pieces you're going to need to build this thing. The instructions have been tested for accuracy, parts list curated for the best possible pieces, nothing too rare. And David also made an excellent set of graphics if you wanted to print out your own special stickers. Buying instructions is always a great way to help support what we do here at the channel, and it helps support the amazing designers that we work with, like David, who's been doing these incredibly large, extremely well-detailed models for the past several years. Any and all support is always greatly appreciated. And now let's jump into the details of the Colonial Viper Mark VII. As you can see already, it's a pretty large model. While on the stand here, the length comes out to around 23 inches or 58 centimeters, 13 inches wide or 33 centimeters, and 11.5 inches tall, nearly a foot tall or 29 centimeters. Now that is a decently large footprint, but David is the kind of builder who very much takes advantage of that extra size. When scaled like this, he can really match up some of the nicer, sleeker proportions of this model. The nose comes to a relatively fine point, and there you can see in the front there's a little scoop or intake that rounds itself out quite nicely. The two large intakes on the original Mark II have been reduced significantly on the sides by the wings, and the thin stretch of metal that comes from the tip of the nose to the end of the wing is probably one of the more important angles to get correctly on this ship. It really follows a nice through line that easily allows your eye to follow, and especially at a distance, pulls this nice sleek shape of the ship together, I think probably better than anything else. The suggestion of the double stacked intakes that are layered behind the cockpit are built so simply, yet achieve the look quite nicely, and then the integration of those larger Technic panels on either side feel pretty seamless in comparison to the largely LEGO system bricks that are used to flesh out the rest of the skin. There's a wonderful through line that cuts along the gray metallic outer covering from the engines, especially when you look at it from a side view like this. It's a detail that has to remain consistent while passing through several shapes of the model here, and extremely important to get right if you want the model to look recognizable, especially at this size. And then this is a pretty signature stylistic choice from the builder David, but he likes to make his models look just as good from the bottom as well. For the most part, the ship is pretty smooth from the underside. He does have the detailing for the intake that cuts around maybe halfway up the snout. Also, one of my favorite ways to look at the model is from the very front, looking just down around the nose. There you can see the triangular shape of the top fin and the two wings separating, and I love that the wings get a little bit thinner as they move all the way down towards the very ends. And now it's time to get into some of the fun details, some of the finer points of building that really make this ship pop and feel more alive. Starting at the front again, this time from the bottom, this is probably one of my favorite building aspects of the model. David decided to use the connecting part, the base part of the standard hinge piece, but this time as a detail. The normal 1x2 building base has been used to slowly but surely angle inward ever so slightly to match up with the plates on the underside. It's such a cool idea. I've never actually seen anybody use the hinge piece in this way before. Now it's hard to tell exactly what those lines are that cut across the original model for the Mark VII, but David used light bluish gray in a pretty strategic way around the ship in order to highlight some of the line detailing on the model that normally you wouldn't see. The highlights along the nose are especially skillful because it makes your eye focus on a certain part of the ship that I think is intrinsically recognizable, though not usually highlighted, and it also plays a slight trick on the eye, forcing you to see this part of the model as completely connected, even though these are different larger angular chunks that are coming together to a point. Also, my personal favorite use of light bluish gray in this model is the spring-loaded shooters that you can see along the top fin. They match up with some plate detailing here and there, but those tiny little cuts in those 1x4 bricks themselves are a nice subtle bit of detailing that personally I haven't seen used in a Lego model before. Now, I think I've put it off long enough. It is time to get into the details of the cockpit. The windscreen folds open. There are a lot of stud connections here when you open up the windscreen, so don't feel bad if these two little side chunks are still studded in when you lift it up, but the interior here is so excellent. The bullion pieces in brown are wonderful details to make up the cushion part of the seat. There's plenty of printed cheese wedge pieces that show some mechanical detailing here and there, but the way in which they're attached is particularly fun, with clip pieces sprawling out in slightly different angular directions. Now jumping back to the exterior, once again there are the 3 kinetic energy weapons, one on either wing, and a third one special for the Mark VII added to the top fin, and then protruding from them are some bars with those minifigure claws clipped in. Not only is this a creative building choice, but it also specifically highlights the Mark VII to being just a little bit different compared to the other ships from this universe. And then let's turn our way to the back, because the detailing for the blue thrusters at this point almost just feels like showing off on David's part. The thrusters are a bit rounded, but they're also hexagonally shaped. So these sloped hexagon type circular pieces that you have, 6 sides here, not only look cool for thrusters, but mimic close to exactly how this ship is supposed to look in universe. And then of course on top of that you're looking at an added stroke of flair here, because instead of just having 1x2 slopes pointing inward, he used the inverted slopes and has those nice light trans blue cheese wedge pieces studded to the inside of the ship, which just makes for an incredible glowing thruster look. I suppose I can't move on without saying nothing about the stand. It's a pretty hefty stand for a model like this. The base is rather large, it's pretty thick, and it is permanently angled upwards and canted to the side. This position works pretty well. It's not angled too high to the point where you can't see the engine detailing when you turn it around, and it's also canted enough for you to see that the underside of the ship is indeed studless, which is, I think, a pretty important detail to know when you're taking a look at this model. He's made his own UCS styled sticker in the front, and then quickly these are some close-up shots of what our stickers look like on the model here. There's a variety of different ways you can print these stickers. The ones that we went with were printed onto white gloss. This is what they look like if you print the details onto a clear glossy sheet. Everything comes out quite a bit darker. And then also quickly, these are some photos that David did of his model, where he actually sent the PDF printout sheet to a business with even better, more high-powered printers than the ones we have here in our studio. Anyways, the method is up to you. We've got some suggestions in the description if you were to purchase the instructions for this model. And also from David's photos, you can see that he did a bit of lighting. Recommendations for how to do that are also included. Now, Now, last but not least is the handling of this ship. There are two rather large bits of Technic brick that slot into the bottom of the ship, so when you remove it, it feels pretty snug on the stand itself, and then once it's in your hand, it's honestly a pretty robust and almost brick-like model. When I shake it around, I don't hear anything moving or rattling ever so slightly, nothing creaks or wobbles. I can firmly grasp the nose here, and it doesn't feel like any weird angle is going to pop out of place. If you look here, I'm poking one little plate area on either side of the model that is technically not connected at the very end, so you can feel just a tiny bit of give just in this one spot, and even the extremities of the wings don't really wobble at all. If you start putting a bit of extra pressure on there, you can feel a little bit of bowing, and the model is heavy, so I would not recommend resting the ship on its wings. But really the only thing that can break off here are, of course, anything nice and small like the extremities of the weapons or the tips of the wings. There is no part of the underside of this ship that I say you should avoid. Pretty much all bottom areas of the ship are load bearing, so yeah, it makes for handling and transport of this model a breeze. And now let's add the whole thing back together. So, final thoughts on the Mark VII. We absolutely loved the other three giant Battlestar Galactica models that came from the designer David Duperron in the past. He's done an update on his Mark II actually to clean up some of the details here and there, and his basic mantra of always improving has not changed here when it comes to the Mark VII. He puts out a big model every once in a while, and that's because he is spending a huge amount of time troubleshooting and tweaking and refining. So we're just really happy to be working with David and to have such an awesome, excellent version of the Colonial Viper Mark VII here in the studio with us. So anyways, guys, if you enjoy our content, you can always like or subscribe, share the video, visit the web store if you wanted to buy the instructions for this ship. It's all linked in the description below. As always, what other types of models would you like to see us making in the future? Any and all suggestions are always welcome. Thanks again for watching to the very end, and we'll see you next time at BrickVault.